This is PolarisLive. I'm your host, Sarwar Kashmiri, welcoming our viewers from around the world to the series of conversations on the relationship between the United States and China and its impact in the world. This program is brought to you live in conjunction with the Foreign Policy Association of New York. My guest today is Professor Ayushi Ketkar from the Special Center for National Security Studies at Jawaharlal Nehru University, a major research university located in New Delhi, India, known for its leading faculties and research emphasis on liberal arts and the applied sciences. Professor Ketkar is a regular contributor to national and international media on topics such as NATO, geopolitics of the Himalayas, and alternate approaches to security. She was a member of the organizing team of the United Nations Conference on Future Threats. It gives me great pleasure to bring to PolarisLive Professor Ketkar. Professor Ketkar, how are you?
I am good, sir. Warm greetings to all, and thank you so much for having me on your platform.
It's an absolute pleasure. I should have said namaste. How are you? It's probably evening there, right? You're all getting ready for your evening chai.
Evening chai, yes, chai pe charcha.
Chai pe charcha.
Yeah.
Listen, Professor Ketkar, this is one of 4 programs that we are using to look at the impact of the American military loss in South Asia, in Afghanistan, and the withdrawal of American forces there, and the impact that it may or may not have on the countries, joining countries. So we have people from India, from Pakistan, from the United States, and so you're part of that series. And I'm really very interested in getting your opinion on a number of things because this is what the headline issues are today. Right? So first of all, let me ask you, Western media observers say there was permanent damage done to the U.S. reputation, its future alliances, by how the Americans withdrew, and the fact that the most powerful military in the world was actually defeated by these, if I may say, sandal-wearing, folks in Afghanistan. So that's how the Indian or the American media started to play it. How has the Indian media played it? And what is your own personal opinion about, is this a big reputational loss for the U.S.? So please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I think this is a very important question, especially in the age of social media, where images play a more important role than the words said. So this was critical because you had the media projecting US as almost a loser. It was a case of what Paul Kennedy would have said as imperial overstretch and those kind of concepts. It was like US is no more the big brother, no more the superpower, and those kind of images. Because clearly seeing men fall off planes mid-air was not a very comfortable thing. It was a very unpleasant picture, I must say. And though the whole world knew that US would be out of Afghanistan, it was just a matter of time. And we've been hearing this from at least the past 4 presidents have been talking of it. And since Obama, this is being a very concrete issue, and in fact an issue which has even probably steered electoral fortunes. So this, though it was known, but the manner in which it was done, in the manner in which it happened, was something that the world couldn't accept. As far as the Indian media is concerned, first of all, I must say, I'm rather playing the devil's advocate here. The media projections depends largely on political affiliation as well as your ideological moorings. But despite that, the common understanding or the inference that could be drawn was that US was a declining power and countries could not hypothecate their security and safety needs to US alone. And, it was, each one would have to fend for themselves. At least in the region, in the South Asian region, this was the clear-cut message that happened. If you will,
Right.
in the US,
Right.
probably placing your eggs in the wrong basket. So that was how it would seem.
But what is your own personal opinion? And also, the size of the American military and the power of the American military is so vast that I'm really interested, before you answer what your own personal opinion is, it might be the same, but I'm really interested in whether that is, you believe is really true, that America is a declining power. Because a lot of people say, where America has so many strengths, including this ability to absorb people from all over the world and renew its technological prowess and its financial markets and, all of that, that this is another loss. And perhaps, as you say, as Paul Kennedy says, imperial overreach. But tell me about your own personal opinion on this. And I really like what you said about what the media says is dependent on their background and their political affiliation, right?
Absolutely. Yes. At a personal level, I still do have faith in America's ability to bounce back. And one of the reasons why I'm saying that is, for a long, long time, that narrative that US is a land of opportunities has somehow worked in its favor. And that's how it is seen. Perhaps even you, sir, are a part of that brigade, which saw America as a land of opportunities and probably migrated there. And this holds true for a lot of Asians, for a lot of Latin Americans, people from various parts of the world, even the Chinese for that matter, who see that as a land of opportunity. So I won't say this is the end of US power completely, but I would definitely say it is a time for US to rethink about its role, not only globally, but whether it's as a global power, as a regional power. In fact, it is time for it to even introspect some of its own shortcomings. And COVID obviously showed that in a big way, not only
Yes.
to the US, but to the developed world, that despite all the infrastructure that they have, their public health systems kind of crumbled to this unthought of and unprecedented calamity that the
Right.
global was seeing.
Right. So this would be a good place then to segue, Professor Ketkar, to what do you think are the implications for Indo-Pak relations of a Taliban-ruled Afghanistan? Right. I'm very interested in this because, if India and Pakistan could cool it, if I may use that phrase, and become better connected with one another, it would be such huge benefit to both of them, it seems to me. So do you think that this development in Afghanistan, what impact do you think it has, if any, on Indo-Pakistani relations? I think we might be having some technical difficulties at your end, Professor Ketkar. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Professor Ketkar? So let's just see what happens. We seem to have lost the internet connection to New Delhi. And Professor Ketkar has just finished telling me about the impact of the American loss in Afghanistan and the impact on world opinion, what the media has been writing. She mentioned declining power, but she also mentioned that from her for her own opinion and what she has studied, she fully expects America to bounce back, but she advises that this is the time when America needs to take stock of where it's come from, where it's going, what the geopolitical situation on the world is. And so before we lost the internet connection, I was really very interested in all of that. So I think we have her back. So Ayushi, I think we lost you for a little while, but I was just recapping to our viewers what you had just finished saying, and I was really very interested in the fact that you said that America, you believe, has the capability to bounce back. but they should take this opportunity to understand where it's come from, where it's going, because the world is changing, right? And then I had asked you if you think that what implications of the American exit from Afghanistan would have on Indo-Pakistani relations, because if India-Pakistan could get together, it would be of enormous benefit to both countries. And I may be one of the few people who was born there, excuse me, when there was no India and Pakistan. Anyway, that's not the point. So what do you think? Does the American exit from Afghanistan and the reputational issue, will it have any impact on Indo-Pakistani relations?
Well, India-Pakistan relationship by and large is a hostage to its own creation, in the sense that this two-nation theory, which became the hallmark of, it's almost an existential strain in the US, especially the elite circle. They almost thrive on that. They are Pakistan because they are not Hindustan, that kind of a mindset.
Okay.
So, it's almost like, much to the chagrin of common man like you and me, both the countries have that very strong cultural bond. Even today, Indian cereals and Pakistani dresses, a lot of their are similar, and food habits. There's so many similarities.
Indeed.
A lot of people would feel that this kind of dehyphenation should not have happened. The kind of Indo-Pak rivalry that has become a hallmark of South Asian politics. And unfortunately, even an organization like SAR couldn't take off because of this hostilities between these two nations.
But the reason, excuse me for interrupting, the reason I'm asking this, Professor Ketkar, is because at least a large part of the Western media, there is an understanding that the ISI, the Pakistani intelligence operation, was involved in the Taliban. There's also a perception that RAW, the Indian intelligence, one gets involved in it. And so I wondered, now that we don't have a major power involved there, it's basically Pakistan, India, Afghanistan, whether there might be some thaw possible.
And for a lot of strategic thinkers, it is almost like India, Pakistan, and Afghanistan also as an extension of Pakistan, with as you rightly said, with ISI and their military, almost handling, and the Haqqani brothers. The worst part, or the sordid tale of that is that entire terrorism taking roots. In fact, controlling Afghanistan. That's not a very good sign. And in India, I think we must be very wary of it, because till now we just had radical Islam to tackle with. Now it's radical Islam plus a lot of more uncomfortable aspects added to it. So this is only going to multiply the security dilemma that we already face because of the hostilities between these two countries. So clearly, it's not going to brood well for India, and especially in the region of Jammu, Kashmir, Ladakh. Please understand that the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir, it's only since August 2019 now you've got them as two union territories: Union Territory of Jammu and Kashmir and the Union Territory of Ladakh. And a major chunk of these regions are already occupied by Pakistan. And now having the Taliban take over Afghanistan is definitely a matter of great worry, a great concern, security concern for the Indian establishment. Because here we've already grappled with radical Islam in Jammu and Kashmir. You had a whole lot of separatist movements that have taken roots and have completely disrupted the environment of Jammu and Kashmir. And with Afghanistan, with the Taliban takeover of Afghanistan, and rather I must say with the Haqqani takeover of Taliban, this is a big alarm sign for India. And we are already seeing clear-cut signs of that in Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh region, where there are killings happening. We've got non-Kashmiris, non-Muslims, which are being killed indiscriminately. We've been facing that since the past 1.5 months. And despite the abrogation of Article 370, we had a period, almost a period of it's a period of 2 years, where we saw peace and tranquility, and the government was, despite COVID, doing a lot of attempts to integrate the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir and to see its economic development. All that has come to a halt. Now
So,
it is.
Ayushi, I'm interrupting again, but it seems to me you're saying that that this issue of America leaving Afghanistan may indeed have an opposite effect on Indo-Pak relations because of the more direct and many-stranded connections that
Absolutely,
have
absolutely.
developed. That's what you're saying.
It's now, absolutely, sir, because now Pakistan, and especially Pakistan's ISI, has a free hand. It feels its western frontiers taken care of because it's almost controlling Afghanistan. It has close ties with the Taliban, with the people in power there. So since that has happened, now their entire focus comes to this part, which is India, and especially the region of Jammu and Kashmir. So this is definitely a matter of concern for us, because at least till the US was there, it was not so upfront and personal as it is now.
Right.
Now we're almost facing this on a day-to-day basis, and this doesn't seem to abate. At
Thank
least
you
not
for
in the
your
short term.
opinion on that. I'm going to segue now, Professor Ketkar, to the so-called Quad, right? The quadrilateral dialogue, the Quad, which is a grouping of U.S., India, Japan, and Australia,
Yes.
right? And so in America's mind, and America considers itself, I think, the leader of the Quad organization. But in America's mind, clearly, this is yet another way, one of the pieces that America is putting together to serve as a counter to China's growth and power extension, right? And so, how do you, in your opinion, and you might also want to tell me what the Indian media is doing, but especially in your opinion, how do you describe the Quad? Is this a military organization? Is this a grouping of countries? Is this a organization that that brings interests of these four countries together? Right? How do you describe the Quad?
I would term it as a coalition of democracies which are interested in a safe Indo-Pacific. That's how I see Quad as. And far from being a military alliance, it is purely for the purpose of some common interest, to serve some common interest, whether it's freedom of navigation, safety of the Indian Ocean region. So there clearly, and of course, all these countries share common a worldview in terms
Yes.
of whether it's liberal democracies, whether it's a free market economy, and most important, and especially post COVID, we need to mention this. It's a rule-based world order. This is very important, because somewhere in being powers and superpowers and great powers, we've completely missed out on being ethical powers, righteous powers. Because in the Indian context, this is very important to understand, and I'm sure you would appreciate the fact that for according to the Indic perspective, power is just a means. It's not an end by itself. And the main aim of power, of acquiring power, is the welfare of people. So clearly, I think we need to come back to some of those old alternatives provided by these rich civilizations, which talk of power not in terms of just rights, but in terms of responsibilities, in terms of duty. So
Right.
coming back to the issue of Quad, I see that as I clearly told you, a coalition of democracies with interests in the Indo-Pacific region, in a safe Indo-Pacific region. And it's not a military alliance, and clearly it's not going to be one. From
Ah,
India's point of view, it's clearly a matter of economic interest that we share. We are looking at how all these countries can benefit from each other, how there can be mutual growth, and how we can commonly address some pressing global threats, whether it's the issue of climate change, whether it's the issue of how ethically or how to ensure a rule-based world order. So there are common concerns. So I don't see this as a military alliance.
so
And
2 points. Two
yes, sir.
points, right? And
Yes.
I'm interrupting again because you have this way of introducing such different and interesting pieces to the answer, right? You mentioned one thing, and you mentioned ultimately power is about benefits to the country's interests, right? And then in the same breath, you also mention in your answer coalition of democracies, like-minded people. Now listen, and forgive me for being blunt about this, right? But here's China, not a democracy,
Right.
autocracy, and here's India,
Mm-hmm.
democracy, right? 10 years ago, 20 years ago, India and China started at the same place when it comes to economy, when it comes to per capita income, right? Today, India is pretty much where it was. China has raised 900 million people out of poverty. So what is the big deal about being part of a democratic alliance of interests around the world if the interest of the common Indian has not been able to be bettered, and again, pardon me with respect for being blunt, in all of these years? And China's gone ahead and India's, so what's the big deal?
Now, again, I would like to introduce you to another concept which probably international relations really is not comfortable, especially the realist worldview might not be comfortable with. But there is something like what you would say, which is called as the grand narrative. What is it that each country stands for? While India talks of being a Vishwaguru, it has never wanted to be a hegemon, a superpower in that sense. So in India, the concept is of being a Vishwaguru, at the most teaching from what we know, sharing the wisdom, the common wisdom that we possess. But if you look at China, and you will find the answer right in their worldview, in their grand narrative itself. If you look at their strategic thought, that the Tianxia system, it talks of China as the middle kingdom or the middle power. So there, in its very roots, you will see Chinese form of, being a hegemonic power. Their interest in always expanding. It's an expansionist power. It's a revisionist power. So it doesn't come as a surprise. Leaving for that 100 odd years where it had to suffer and what it calls a century of humiliation. Probably prior to that and after that, China has always shown the same trends, the trends of expansionism, the trend of being a superpower, wanting to be a superpower. So even today, what you see, many of them, and probably rightly call COVID-19 as Wuhan virus, and it doesn't come as a surprise. So by hook or crook, China wants to be there. It wants to show whether the narrative could be, she would like to say this is the century of humiliation that we are going to dispel, and we are going to earn back our pride of place in the Committee of Nations. Whatever the narrative that he builds, the common fact remains that China has been an expansionist power and continues to be so. Whereas India probably is happy. The Indian people, despite not having the kind of phenomenal growth that China has had, they'll be a much happier lot. So somewhere even you see China being inspired by Indic practices like yoga. There are a lot of Chinese who love yoga, who are practicing it. You have Indian movies, Indian music, being very popular in China. So I don't see economics being the only yardstick. There's no doubt China is way
Okay.
ahead, but that can't be the only measuring, rod for it.
Thank you. So, well, let me take you back to the Quad, right?
Right.
It seems to me that there's a growing number of military exercises, Malabar naval exercises, and so on, that these four countries are doing with one another. And so, if so, but it seems to me most of the threat that India is facing is up in the Himalayas. Do you think there's an expectation in India that because of the Quad,
Mhm.
were nasty things to continue happening, or heaven forbid, a war breaks out, that the other countries of the just give me a minute or so answer on this. The other countries will come to India's help, rescue, fight militarily?
This is not going to be a very pleasant situation, and I hope this never happens. But again, here the real danger is not smaller countries like Nepal, and with some of them, with Bhutan and all, we have very good relations. The only buffer state left is Nepal, which again is under a lot of influence from China because of the deep pockets that China has. And of course, another important buffer that was Tibet, which now is, which for a long time, I won't say now, but for a pretty long time is under Chinese occupation, and the Tibetans are really struggling to be autonomous, at least autonomous in that sense, if not a free nation. So I don't see this happening, but if it happens, clearly not just these countries, but even the global. I'm sure the support will be for India, because India has never been an aggressor. And whatever is happening now in the Ladakh region, whether it's Galwan or these skirmishes that are happening on the borders, they are by and large Chinese. Again, their incursions that are happening, and India is just responding back. India is just defending its territory, because we already have quite a bit of territory under Chinese occupation, and now definitely the Indian nation and the Indian establishment will not, it's not going to give even an inch anymore.
So I'm going to sum up this section of what I wanted to talk about by saying that if I understand you, the Quad is not a military alliance. That this is not something that is contemplated with the Quad. That it is a grouping of people with democratic bent, with certain interests, and that as America plots its strategy of countering China, it should not think about India as being militarily supportive of that, even though there are exercises and so on to get people to work together and better,
these exercises took place even before Quad. They're continuing to do so, but it doesn't have a military intent to it. Definitely it doesn't have, because India realizes China is not just a revisionist power, but also its neighbor. So India has to grapple with that complexity.
And a growing business presence also.
Absolutely.
So as we run out of time, I do want to get one more thing in. See, you have such stark views, provocative views, that I want to keep going. But let me try this. India and Russia, previously Soviet Union, but now Russia, have been longtime friends, right? And Russia has been part of the community of India and vice versa through thick and thin, right? No one was giving help to India. Russia did. Much of Russia's armaments are still purchased by India, right? But in America, there is a real fear of what Russia is doing and sanctions against Russian companies and so on. So I'm sure you know that the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, of which Turkey is a member, Turkey is about to buy these very effective anti-missile systems, the AS-400, I believe it's called. And there is very strong sentiment on the Hill in the American Congress that cannot be allowed. It's not a NATO-approved weapon. Turkey, some people say, should be thrown out of NATO. So I want to just briefly hear from you, how does this square? Will India give up its purchase of AS-400s because it's now part of the Quad, and there will be growing hostility on the Hill in Washington to that purchase?
This is interesting because, for a long time, every time you talk of India getting closer to US, people, especially the old school, they mention NAM, the non-aligned movement, and how can India do that? Right. And I'm sure in our previous conversation we spoke that. So, but the fact remains that the post 2014 India is a different India, and the foreign policy clearly is one of dehyphenation. So we are not going to, while I won't go to the extent of saying that NAM is irrelevant, but we have definitely improvised on it. We have customized it to the current needs, and we have revisited it in a way that today India has relationships with whichever country it wishes to have on the basis of merit and on the basis of a common concern. So clearly with Russia, we have had very good ties. Please remember that Russia came to our rescue especially on the veto aspects on Jammu and Kashmir time and again, when the world, when India was shouting out that there is radical Islam, there's terrorism, and the world was not accepting it. It was only post 9/11 that the world realized that terrorism is a real threat that the world faces. So Russia, USSR helped us during that time, and that has continued today with Indo-Russian ties being very close. And Russia
Indeed.
is
Indeed.
our most reliable military and defense equipment partner. In that sense, there is no two thoughts about it. There's no two ways about it. It's very clear that we rely on Russia in terms of technology transfer as well as equipment, providing us with the latest state-of-the-art equipment. Having said that, India is not going to remain hostage to, being you are in this camp or that camp. I think that doesn't exist. That post-Cold War, that Cold War era is over. Now it could be replaced by the new Cold War between China and US, but definitely it's not going to be that brave. India will continue to have its close ties with Russia. At the same time, we'll work with US on many issues that because there are a whole lot of commonalities that India and US has. There are common concerns and there are aspects which both the countries can work together in unison for the better of the world at large.
So you're telling me that if the American politic is crass enough to say, listen, you want to be part of Quad, don't buy the AS400. First of all, I hope it doesn't, because that puts India in a very difficult situation. But if crazies were to do that, then India would basically say, look, what we do is our business. So don't tell us what to do. We'll be your friends,
Absolutely.
part of the democracies. That's what you're telling me.
Yes, precisely. That is exactly what I want to point you out, because America has done that with its CATSA and those kind of acts,
Indeed.
countering American adversaries through Sanctions Act. It has done that in the past, and it has seen this will prove detrimental, especially in Indo-US ties. That's going to prove extremely detrimental.
And I mean, I'm one of the camp in America that do believe we are on a much steadier and much more safer trajectory, the kind of hallmark of as American policy used to be. So we'll just wait and see how that goes. But listen, it's time to close. We are running out of time. But my last question is, you, Professor Ayushi Ketkar, you find yourself alone with President Xi Jinping for a few minutes and with President Biden for a few minutes. I would like to know, very few words, what you would tell them, each one of them separately, to help produce a safer South Asia.
Well, the most important thing I would tell them is to take care of their own countries in a nice way, because I'm sure they have their own issues to grapple with. Their, US has its, the racial and social justice system, which needs to be looked into. And the economy also is an important issue. So I'm sure both the countries has its own set of problems to deal with, to look into and to grapple with. And I think they should just leave India, Pakistan, and South Asia alone. I think each country is capable of fending for itself. So this big brotherly treatment or this super great power or super powerdom, I think it needs to end. The time for an egalitarian world where each country takes care of itself and in the global interests, keeping the global interests in mind, because that era of national interest purely in Hans Morgenthau terms is over. Now, I think the world needs to look at bigger things. It needs to transcend these narrow parochial borders and move into bigger things. And COVID has shown us that, because you can't have one very safe country and the rest grappling with basic things. So if it is clearly, each one not only fending for themselves, but looking in the larger interest of humanity. And
somewhere in the background, I hear the Buddha speaking. And with this question, Professor Ketkar, I must draw this to a close. But let me thank you for your very, very forthright and very learned remarks. And thank you for appearing on PolarisLive.
It was my pleasure, sir. Thank you.
So let me, in ending this episode of Polaris Live, tell my viewers that I appreciate your listening, viewing Polaris Live. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel. As you know, there's no cost to that. Uh, Polaris Live is a commercial-free discussion of leading experts from around the world. And so until we meet again, I'd like to remind you that if you go to kashmiri.com, you will find a listing of upcoming programs as well as other news about what we are doing with Polaris Live.